put that in a building and not have it sitting out where it's covered up by, I think it's chain link. So it adds to kind of this bulk or bunker type of mentality. So put the bicycles in the building, keep them dry. Maybe turn that back into some open space and something that people who don't ride bikes can actually enjoy. Plus, this is a project on a hill. I'm going to schlep my bike from this street, up these stairs, around to the back, or I'm going to do this alley for my bike and then maneuver my way down to the bike parking. It needs to be thought through a little bit better. Speaking of thought through, I shouldn't share this, but I'm looking at the building permit, big old plans. They misspelled the name of the street. They misspelled Oregon. and it's like in font this big. I mean, to me, there's little things that drive me bonkers, and having people prepare plans who don't know how to spell, and that leads me to think about what else haven't they a grip on? Do they really have a grip on the window wells where you have to, I'm short, could I get out of that window well and then climb up a ladder to get out? So, spelling. The height on the penthouses and the roof is wildly inappropriate. So you've got your elevator, which is great to have, even though it doesn't go to the basement. So the basement's not accessible, which is why there's the window wells and all that great stuff. But on top of that, then they throw the height from the penthouse of the elevator on top of the roof, plus the rooftop deck. It's like compounding the injury. And I think that from a design aspect, there's a lot that they could do to mitigate the impact of the roof and the rooftop components, and be sensitive to the neighbors from a design perspective if we were looking at that. I would request that a parking study, that the applicant provide a parking study to document the amount of parking that is available, and also look at the likelihood of an RPZ on this section of the city. 2009 is a long time ago in development history for a parking study, and I think this applicant should be required from an environmental standpoint to provide a parking study for this project, and I hope it's a better parking study than the one that showed up for the project in Morgan. I think that engagement bicycle height and parking study. Watch the green factor closely. That's probably more of the folks doing the building permit. I don't know if they'll correct the spelling. It's probably not within their area of expertise, but wow, Oregon, O-R-E-G-O-N. So once again, I just want to say thank you everybody for coming, but please don't let this be your last time coming to a public meeting. Please don't let this be your last time caring. There's lots and lots of projects going on in West Seattle that need your attention. There's lots of issues going on that need your attention. It's great that you care about this. Everyone who's got something in there across the alley from them that they don't like, of course you're going to be here, but can you be here next week and next month and in November when things matter? Please show up then too. Thanks.
Gone through the list. Are there others who would like to speak? Raise your hand.
I have one comment that I can add in when I spoke first.
Okay. Why don't I go with the newer people and then I'll come back. And I'll start from the left and go to the right. So I saw a few hands over here. Ma'am? Yeah.
My name is Sharon Weeks. I live at 4745 37th Avenue Southwest. I've lived in this has been my community for the last 30 years. I worked on the initial urban plan when I first moved here. I worked on the triangle plan as a committee member. I participated in all parking studies. I have engaged myself as much as I could When we were working on the triangle plan, it was about density and putting it around that corner. Initially, we did not want the height there that they were proposing. It started to make sense to me. It only made sense because it was supposed to be a step-down effect that goes into the neighborhood, which would impact my neighborhood, my block on 37th, directly up the hill on Alaska. When I look at this project, I don't think this is being appropriately designed or addressed by the city to accommodate those particulars that we laid out in our triangle plan process. That was a 2-year process. We trusted you to be a steward of being able to step back from the highest level, 9 stories, make it adjust to a single-family home area without being impacted in a way to where you felt like you were in a canyon. I think what we have here, I kind of want to take this more as a land use issue, not, a parking issue, which it will be. We have 600 units that were just added around my house at 37th Alaska. I have 4 cranes within sight. I haven't been able to park on my street in 4 years, and you won't either. When you go to have your parking study done, I met with DPD, we walked every street, and the conclusion was we actually had increased parking. We increased parking because they added the parking to both sides of the street. That's the only plus we got out of that. So I'm really encouraging to engage with the fact that the land use that's being proposed here with this project, citywide with L2, is inappropriate. I think it's an oversight on the part of DPD to have not addressed that. And I really think there ought to be, at some point, before we see a rash of this everywhere across the city of Seattle, I think there ought to be a moratorium. And I think that is the best way.
Positively.
Have your hand up, sir? Other hands up for that phone? Sir in the blue?
Thank you for having this meeting. I know you guys have a tough job, so I appreciate that. It's not easy to come and have a room full of people that are upset about different things. I appreciate that. My name is Peter Mueller. I serve as the senior pastor of Hope Lutheran Church and School and serve and function as the executive leader of Hope in that capacity. As a matter of context, Hope has been physically located at the corner of Oregon and 42nd since 1919. Our first building was built there for $1,650 in 1919, and we've been there for 95 years ever since, serving the community of West Seattle with a message and with actions of hope. And one of the primary ways that we serve our community is with our school that serves 217 students, preschool through 8th grade. And we provide a service through that school that saves Seattle taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars every single year since 1959 by those students not attending public schools. And that's especially important at a time when West Seattle public schools are full and overflowing, building new buildings, renovating old buildings, adding portables, and so on. It's unfortunate and somewhat unbelievable that the city would authorize the building of a 40-unit, 4-story building only 14 feet. That's what it is, 14 feet from an elementary school playground. And elementary school, as Kristen Okabayashi, our principal, noted, is providing an environment of excellent academic education every day.
Amen.
There are issues of safety, certainly, with increased both people, but especially traffic going up and down that alley as a primary access point, not only to parking, but for deliveries, for moving trucks, and other vehicles of that nature. When the children, as were mentioned earlier, use that alley multiple times a day to move to our different playground areas and public physical education areas. And there are issues of privacy, for sure. and traffic. It's a personal issue for me as well, as 2 of those students are my own in 3rd and 1st grades. And it's unthinkable, I think, we would all agree, that such a building would be built so close to a public school playground at 14 feet away. And so my assumption is that either this is just an unfortunate oversight, that perhaps in the planning process it wasn't recognized that there was an elementary school playground and school 14 feet away with over 200 students, or that the city or the developer or someone just doesn't care about that. And I certainly hope that it's the first, that it's an unfortunate oversight that just wasn't taken into account somehow in the planning process. And I just want to say that, Hope longs to love and to serve the people of our community, regardless of the size of housing they live in. Hope does not have a problem with high-density housing in general when it's located in the appropriate places within the West Seattle community, such as many of the buildings that have gone up on arterial streets where there's lots of traffic, there's more parking, it's something that's more suitable for that. But in a single-family neighborhood with multiple schools, including one 14 feet away, it doesn't seem that this building is proposed to be built in the right location, but rather in the wrong location. And therefore, on behalf of Hope, I would additionally simply request that such a building not get built in that location, but that the project be downgraded to something more appropriate in the nature of townhouses and so on that would fit that space better. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Amy Loftus. I live at 4744 45th Avenue Southwest, so about 4 blocks from here. And many of you probably recognize I walk my kids nearly everywhere. I walk them to daycare. We walk to Hope Church on Sunday. Hello, everyone here. It is very important to me to have a walkable community. And with the density as it's happening, with so many projects coming in, it's not safe. I've been cussed out on the street. I've been nearly ran over. I feel like I have to ask permission to cross the street. So it's an environmental safety issue. I welcome anyone from your department to walk with me one day, and I will show them like all the issues of going around this neighborhood. It's a huge concern. Also, the congestion on the C line, the voters just voted down the funding for that. So the practicality of people being able to hop on the bus. I just went to downtown this week, came back on the C line, had to stand so that other people could sit. Totally am fine with that, obviously, but I feel like that we need to work on that. So this needs to be more progressive development overall. Already my street on 45th Avenue Southwest, I'm fortunate to have parking space for me to come home, so it's not a worry. But that street is a park and ride. It's crazy. People either come in and they're going to the businesses, which I appreciate that, or they're going to the Sunday market or whatever it is in the evening. It's bar central. People are drunk as skunks coming home, so it's not healthy or safe. But it's not going to be a place where there's a lot of new parking spots that are going to be able to come in and stay and really use that. And it's not realistic that people are going to live in the houses and not have cars. It's just not. They're not required to sign a contract. They're going to have their cars because people want to go to the hills to go skiing, or they want to have a life outside of West Seattle, or they want to do something. So it just it's not realistic to think that people are going to give up their cars. Thank you.
We have a few more minutes.
I just have a question about the zoning in the school. Can you speak to how this could come about with what Pastor Peter described? If it were a public school, would it have been allowed?
Yeah, there would be no difference between how we consider a public school or a private school.
So that 14 feet away, no problem.
Yeah, we look at, the city looks at, we permit, the type of uses depends on type of zone it is. So the church is in a neighborhood commercial zone, and the subject property that we're talking about tonight is in a low-rise of apartment townhouse type zone.
So the school, though, is
Yeah, we don't have, there are no regulations
nothing
on
special
proximity to schools.
about school. So we have to get rid of our kids and our cars.
Can I say something, just really quick? to belabor the point, but I'm a parent. I have 3 kids at Hope Lutheran. I'm also on staff as their admissions counselor. So number one, I have families coming to me to West Seattle because it is that still quintessential neighborhood feel. They run into other families at the grocery store and at the market, and they love the fact that they recognize their neighbors. And as I feel our school does a very good job in trying to have good relationships with the neighbors around us, that we try to be as respectful as we can. We know that living next to a school is not easy. You know, lots of activity going on both during the day and the night. So we put a great importance on that. And as a parent and also as a staff member, the fact that this building could be across the alley, 14 feet from my kids' playground, and I realize you don't have the control of who lives there. No, we don't have the control of who lives anywhere, really, but we know our neighbors. I don't know people living in this 300, 250 square foot place that overlook the playground. My daughter was asked to get into a car by a stranger on Oregon Street in October. And it just, I know that we're in an urban setting and I know those things happen, but I feel like that's just too much, too many people near this school, near this church, in this neighborhood, to be safe and to give people that neighborhood feel where like they know the people around them, that they're not just some person driving into their apartment and then driving back out and you get 2 seconds, you know, to take a look at them, maybe wave and say hi. So that's all. Thank you.
About two more speakers?
Just something quick, what can we expect to happen next? What's going to happen with all of the information that you've heard here? How can we be communicated if there's going to be any change in direction of this project? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, I can address that. And as I said earlier, the department wrote a set of corrections addressing the plans that we received from the developer. We have not heard back from them, so we're probably not going to do anything other than I'm going to write down the notes from tonight until I hear from that developer, and that developer applicant responds to to these lists of questions I have about the project. You know, many of the comments that I had on the correction address, you know, things like parking issue, height, bulk, and scale, and you know, transit, things like that, the roof deck, you know, all those, many of the issues that have been brought up tonight. So they need to respond to what we've written to them. So once that happens, we may have another round of corrections, which generally happens. We go maybe once, twice, 3 times we correct. And we get to a point where the city says, well, you've answered our questions, you've changed things in response. And then what happens, and all this time you can continue, the plans will come back in. They'll be online, you can review them online, and you can contact me if you have questions about that or comments. And at some point, I'm going to write what's called a master use permit or a MUP decision. And that's usually a 15-page report that goes through you know, the issues that we've identified in terms of environmental impacts, traffic. And if you signed in tonight as a party of record, we'll send you a notice about that decision. And then you can click on the notice, and that'll get you to a copy online of the written decision. So I can't tell you when that will happen because I have no influence on the timing that the developer uses to finish the corrections, to answer our questions. But you will be notified of that.
Excuse me, Bruce, very quick question. How long does the applicant have in order to respond to the corrections? 60 days, 90 days, or you could just...
We don't put real strong time limits on it.
Okay, thank you.
Deb?
Bruce, the environmental decision and the MUP decision that she'll be writing, that's an appealable document, is that correct?
That's a good question. Yes, it's what's called a type 2 decision. What that means is that after the city, after the department publishes the decision and everyone reads it, there's a 2-week window in which anyone could appeal it to what's called the city's hearing examiner. And then that's a quasi-judicial process that the city council, the city has put together. We have 2 women who are the hearing examiners. They listen to the charges that the appellants will make, the arguments about why the city made an inappropriate decision, if we didn't think so. And then the hearing examiner makes a decision based on the protocol that goings on that went on during the hearing. And that's open to the public as well.
And I'm going to just jump in and say, if anyone would like to attend one of those hearings, attend an appeal hearing, there'll be an appeal hearing of the Morgan Junction project that'll be held on the 20th. That'll be starting at 9 a.m. and 40th floor of DPD. See address, 500 4th Avenue? 5th Avenue, 500 5th Avenue.
And then, once that process is over, the applicant still needs to submit building plans, and the city reviews those as well. They can't build until we approve the building plans. The MUP, which is this current process that I'm facilitating, has to be approved before the building plans are approved.
So they have to spell Oregon correctly before it gets issued.
You know, I have that pet peeve too, so when I see the plans, I will circle them, I will redline.
I give you a list of misspelled words. So.
Yes?
I'm new at this, so I heard that this is an L2 project.
It's
Is that kind of open-ended? I mean, there are no real restrictions on an L2 project? I mean, is this the developers got kind of a free hand to do this because the city doesn't really have it wrapped together with defined controls, and so it's kind of a done deal?
Let me clarify. This project lies within what's called a LR2 zone, which means low-rise zone. That's primarily for low-rise apartments or townhouses. We do have a whole set of regulations in our land use code on low-rise zones, as well as parking regulations and street regulations and things as well. So I think what Vlad mentioned earlier is that when we put together the design review program, we looked at the higher density neighborhoods, downtown, all the commercial neighborhoods in the city, and the LR3, which is a little higher density than LR2. So we didn't have design review on an LR2 project. We're re-looking at those issues.
So the only way to find it is to really define what the issues are and find the specific issues in order to get rid of it, like the height, the roof structure, and the issues of green space, and the issue of parking. You have to find it from that perspective because it really isn't a defined.
We have, in this project, we have 2 means of regulation. One is the zoning code, which is very prescriptive, how high you can go, how wide, how many parking, et cetera. And then we have SEPA, the State Environmental Protection Act. That's more discretionary, and I'd be happy to offline tomorrow go through, show you where those are online, and look at those.
Yeah.
Yes.
May I make just one comment on the SEPA? I attended one other hearing recently that was a SEPA hearing, and they, and I haven't been back to actually read the code itself, but they were very clear that their boundaries are very limited. And while they took all the notes of all the comments, they basically told everybody 90% of your comments we cannot address because we're SEPA and our box is that big. And these are outside the box that we have to play in. So that's just a general feedback on the things that are happening at some of the SEPA meetings.
Sure.
Yeah, I was on the Seattle.gov website, and there was a page there that was telling us that the interim controls will expire on September 8th of 2014, and that a new proposal will then take place for developing small, single-family lots. Can you give us any information about where that's headed?
Well, so that's for small single-family lots, so that's something separate from what we're talking about here tonight. So
I figured as long as you're here.
yeah, so there are some new rules for regulating homes on very small lots, just closing some loopholes, and that's moving forward. The city council is debating the final details of that right now. I don't know offhand when those council meetings are, but they're happening right now. Maybe Vlad knows.
I don't follow that process, but I actually had another comment. First, I just wanted to correct what you said about the zoning and the LR3, because actually before the 2010 code change, actually LR2 was subject to full design review. So it actually was eliminated in 2010.
I don't think that's right, Vlad, actually.
8 units was required in LR2.
8 units in LR3. We've never had...
In LR2?
No, we've never had design review in single family. So if you wanted to do an addition to your single family home, you don't have to go through design
I'm not
review.
talking about single family.
I know, but also in low-rise 1 and low-rise 2, we never had design review. So that wasn't changed.
How is this considered an LR2?
Because I just actually want people to understand that what the absence of that process means, and I'm reading from the code here on administrative design review, and this is what would be happening if that was in there. This is directly from the code. Shall be to identify concerns about the site and development program, receive comments from the public, identify those citywide design guidelines of highest priority site, and/or explore conceptual design or siting alternatives. As a result of this process, the director shall identify and prepare a written summary of any guidelines which may not be applicable to the project and site, and identify those guidelines of highest priority to the neighborhood. The director shall incorporate any community consensus regarding the design as expressed in written comments received into guideline priorities. So that is what is not happening on this site as a result of how the code is written.
Sir?
How is a 5-story, 40-unit building even considered an LR2?
Yeah.
What is the height limit?
4 stories. 4 stories in a penthouse for the owner.
Well,
It was a correction to the code. They just rewrote it to what they needed.
well, so the zoning has things like a height limit. So the height limit is 30 feet. There are setbacks and other standards. And a designer or developer can propose a building as long as they're meeting those standards.
So if it's under 30 feet and so many feet off the street, you could build a honeycomb and just put as many people as possible into it, and it's still a low-rise residential community house.
That's a good way of putting it. You could put as many in this particular area. There's not what we call a density limit, so you could put as many housing units
That sounds to
in
me
this.
like a loophole. Is there any effort being made to change that, to correct that loophole?
Not in this particular area, but we can, we hear you. We hear that concern.
Well, you talked about earlier, the city council and their staff is looking at changes to the low-rise zone. So we need to be out of here at 9, and I have to set the chairs back up.
Sorry. Do you think you already made your comments, your correction comments? from tonight, from what you heard, do you have an opportunity to add your comments or can you do that?
Yeah, I can always do that.
comments
Yes.
as a second cycle revision?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.